can we say that we of the new presentation suffering from a positivity bias? You just talked about being convinced, and we have the certainty and the conviction that whatever those not in line with what you, the new man, are saying, what the real guides advise, what they advise that we do will certainly lead to some not very good consequences, because some people may find themselves in the lower levels of creation, and some in the phantom zone, while only a few lucky few will make it out of creation. We sound so self-convinced and certain about this, and this is why I term it possibility bias that we have, and at the same time, it's like a negativity bias too. So, what do you say about this?
I understand that view, Charles, because it's literal. All right, so when an individual doesn't know what else to do with themselves, they simply express themselves literally. See? Now, if you ask that question to a 3 or 4-year-old child or a 5-year-old child, they would just kind of look at you, maybe giggle, and go off and play with their friends. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, again, you're self-convinced about what you consider what I'm presenting, and it's not that. See, it's how you ask the question, and the first word you use, suffer. Okay, so again, is if a person is suffering, well, we all do suffer. I've suffered a lot, but that's not the idea of what's being presented here, etc. And yes, I give many options. You can go to the real universes, or you can go to the phantom zone or the lower astral with the reptilians. I mean, you have many options, right? And it's not about what I say. What I'm doing is I'm presenting what already exists. I'm not setting up a routine for people to live by. There's no such thing. Paul did that with the membership. You see, again, and the old membership ideas, and people that have been into yoga and meditation and transcendental and psychic sciences, see, they've all come through particular routines. You look at anything that's on Facebook or the internet or the world or whatever, you look at these different things, they all have a set routine. They have some kind of routine that they put them through, especially like Scientology, that's totally evil, okay? Because they really brainwash people, etc. And so does the corporation with Joni and whatever. Yeah, they all do it. They've set up a routine, worshiping and praying. That's a routine. Do we do that? The new you is simply to become more aware. And if you don't want to become more aware, don't sing the new you. That's all. So, again, you see, those old ideas and what is presented here is none of that. This is where you have the childlike heart again, to where it's more like the sun shining, to where you take the impossible challenge on of recognizing and standing real with this isness. How do you do that? I don't set a time with it. Yes, I see a certain way, but I see it as endless, and I see that every moment it's a new beginning, but that's within me. What I express with what I write and say, that's more in a literal sense, and you have to read between the lines. That's where you gain insight. That's where you use your intuition and eventually recognize your real awareness. Now, the boys, the Rebsar and Paul and the real guides, they're an example of this. So how is it they are seen? See, instead of you seeing from from Charles or what everybody else is questioning this on, why don't you learn to see how they see? See, take the time to do that. Can you do that? Can you learn to see how they see? And so again, see, we're constantly, for most people, they're constantly hauling, they're constantly bringing their personal self from here to there. When you move around this world, you're dragging your personal self that you've created. And a lot of people are very proud of that. You know, they've accomplished things in creation, whatever, which is fine. It's all fine. It's choice. And the end result where each person ends up, you know, is choice. So if they take a trip, if a person decides to take a trip and he drives down the road and he's 100 miles away from home and all of a sudden, you know, it starts to rain, the road gets slippery and he drives off the road and he crashes, that's where he ended up. You know, I could say that, hey, you know, there's a storm coming, watch the roads, drive carefully, maybe slow down and take a nap. But did the person listen? No. They just kept driving and they drove off the road. So is it that you're going to think in your mind that, oh, gee, well, you know, this guy ended up wherever he did because of the new presentation, because he was, you know, he sang the new you. Does that make sense? You know, every moment we each make choices, and all the new presentation is a possibility. It's an opportunity. That's all it is. It is, I'm simply specifying in my own way here what already exists. That's the difference. I am not creating doctrine. Do you see the difference? It's a presentation. It's a reference. It is not a doctrine to live by, but it gives you hints so that you yourself can gain insights to even having more experience to contribute something to life. See, this is the whole idea, like a family. And what the is looking for is individuals to recognize what it sees and stand real with it, so we all survive in the awesome real universes. Okay? So what I'm saying here about the phantom zone, the lower astral realm, the reptilians, and everything else that's going on in the governments is that it's not about rebelling against any of these things, but they're warnings. It's like, hey, if you keep agreeing with these things, the end result is that's where you're going to be. You're going to be with them. Is that where you want to be? You want to be with your loving family that's all tap line because they're into religion and they pray to the gods and the reptilians are there, just like when Sandy went to the Eckankar seminar. You know, all she saw was reptilians everywhere. I already know this. It's so infected because Joni's a reptilian. But those people that just see the bodies, they see their wonderful friends. Oh, they all go hug each other and whatever. And by doing that, because they've agreed to the indoctrination and the corporation idea that Joni had took over, etc., that stole, they're all tap line. So I'm showing the subtleties. That's all I'm doing. I'm not setting up restrictions that you must do this or you shouldn't do that. That's not the idea. It's just showing like a warning sign on the road. It's like, you know, curves ahead or slippery when wet. You see these signs, or watch out for falling rocks, okay, etc., whatever it says, or stop ahead or signal ahead. These are warning signs. And in your car, if you want, you can just go off the road a little bit, hit that sign and knock it down. If you don't like that sign, you can do that. It's okay. You know, just don't get caught. And so, again, bringing the old attitudes of restrictions into a new position, I don't see where that makes sense. And all those things that are implied, and this is where you come in. This is your challenge. This is why they've chosen, Rebazar and the boys chose you and Miriam for Africa. I already see this. Just like this other fellow that was with the ancient Chinese family in the bricks. He was chosen to come in here and help me fund the projects, and he decided not to. And so he's stuck in the lower astral realm. He made the choice. I didn't. Yeah, there's a whole lot about that. After 4 years of relationship, now I can talk about it. And I kept it secret for most people. But now I can talk about it because he's a great example of what not to do. I'm trying to show people that, hey, you want to keep doing this? You know, just like Marion's group. You want to let it go? You want to listen to all those ideas that go nowhere? Well, guess what? As everybody goes back with their families and friends that are usually into religion and voodoo of Africa or whatever. So you have the challenge to decide to step up and say something or not. And this is where this individual with the ancient Chinese family had the opportunity. Ava and I talked to him for years. But you know what? He was too afraid to confront his, higher up family. And I said, you have the awareness. They don't. Take on the challenge. Well, he would. So he ended up nowhere. Wasn't because of the new presentation. Wasn't because of the or the guides or life itself. It's because of the choice he made. I'm showing people that, you make a certain choice, the end result is that. This is cause and effect creation. And what's so cool about the real guidance, and I'm so grateful, is that so many of the silly choices I've made in the past, the boys take care of it. They do. They're like my parents. And that's all. And so I've been through a lot too. But what I've done is I've brought it all together like a big vitamin pill, so that you and others don't have to go through years and years and years of nonsense. That it's laid out right there. All you have to do is just take the time to see it, and with your heart and being and intent, learn to see this isness and how it sees. And its view is survival. And it cares about the individuals in creation that are struggling to sincerely wake up. That's its view. That's all. Just wake up and recognize what it is. And it's not a doctrine. It's not a God. It's not restrictions. So what is it? Something that you can't even consider. Again, it's an impossible journey. Do you want to take it on, or do you want to stay the same? Yeah, it's hell and high water getting out of creation. It is a toughie. Oh, it really is. But what are you going to do? Sit here and complain and wonder about it? Then as you're just growing older, because every day you're growing older, yeah, you're at some point, something's going to happen, or you're going to go, you're going to grow old and all of a sudden pop, because of all the GMO food you ate, all of a sudden pop, the body gives out. You're going to be in the astral world. And guess what? You're not going to know where you're at there either, because you don't know where you're at here. I'm simply trying to show people what is going on. That's all. Again, we are not a doctrine. So when these ideas are brought forth, Charles, it's almost like people want a doctrine to go by and told what to do. This is why I didn't want a membership. I wanted to see people for themselves, and if they would have the courage and insight to step up and do something that makes sense. That's all. And so I've created all these things for people to relate to, like Paul never did. It was the spiritual idea. Well, that's a fallacy. It's always been a fallacy. This is what people don't get. Tradition, religion, politics, spiritual, science. It's all a fallacy, but it becomes a reality when you keep agreeing to it. That's the difference, you see. The challenge is, can you see what the is sees? Can you see what the real guides see, instead of begging them, to decide your life for you? Can you see what they're seeing and figure it out? Yes, it's a struggle here. I struggle here too, every day. I don't like getting up here. This world's boring because people have made it boring. I try to make it interesting in some way and kind of fun, but at the same time, most people just want to be boring, and whatever. They just want their routines. That's why I left my family at the best of times, because they just wanted to stay the same. They wanted their comfy little personal life. Well, I like that too. But at the same time, I was like the challenge of seeing more. And as I kept doing it, I did see more. And at some point, I was able to bring this out. Well, I've brought it together. You don't have to spend lifetimes now. You don't even have to spend years. People can pick it up very fast. But with what's going on in the world, step up and do something that makes sense, especially with the natural environment that's being destroyed, because pretty soon all you're going to see is concrete and buildings and cars that pollute the air and processed food. That's it. And it's all Wi-Fi too. There's Wi-Fi and everything. This is the world. This is real. So I see that, you and Miriam have Africa. Are you going to step up and take care of it and these people and creatively bring them around to something that makes sense? Or are you just going to let them go and become self-convinced? Well, we'll see. There's a lot of Africans there, and I don't see the difference. I see the United States as worse. But again, it just depends upon where you're standing. The boys are always there, but they're not going to decide. And so the old routines, again, do not work. So just take the risk and put all that stuff on the shelf. Put it in storage. And then start anew, and then just learn to see something. Just try something. Just take a step forward and, go hug a tree or something. Just look in some way how to gain insight into something that activates a possibility to something. You see? This is not a doctrine. There's no definites. But it's all awesome. You just have to recognize it. And how the challenge is, how will you put that together and share it? This is where I really recommend that each person writes their own life story so they can see what they've been through up until this very moment. Your choice. It's all choice. That's all it is. All you have is choice, and it's been all through these lifetimes. It's just choice. What is it you want to see and be? Or do you want to just do what everybody else does? Yeah, so again, most people can't figure this out. They look at it and go, whatever. Well, I can see it. I'm fine with it. But, I can't make others see. So their situation, and it's not a problem, is that they must take the time to see it. Just like, why do people go to school? To eventually get a job or be educated. Well, there are those certain people that go through the educational process, as an example, but they want to have their own way of doing things. They want to create their own position and job. Not everybody wants to do that. And they want to take on the challenge of, I got this idea, and, maybe I want to be a baker or open an art shop or be a lawyer or whatever, but I want to do it on my own. You see? And that's what I did too with my construction business. I eventually wanted to get on my own. I didn't want to just work for others. I saw that, I didn't want to be a 50, 60-year-old carpenter. I wanted to create it. So I took on the challenge to creatively be something else. And through that, with that, spreading the message at the time, those 30 years that I was there, it all started to come together into where it's the new presentation. And I expanded upon it with what is being presented here. And so that's the fun part. I see this fun adventure. I've made it fun, not just dull and boring where we stand around and we don't know what to do. I have so many ideas, I can't keep up with them because it's fun. And Ava and I, and doing the pictures, and I met Ava, and Rebazar brought Ava in and brought all this together, just like you and Miriam. And there's so much benefit there, but you got to see it and you got to nurture it. And when Ava first came, she goes, I can do your book covers. Well, I was kind of looking at it like, okay, well, I'm doing them, but if I know that sometimes when you get with other people, after a while, it gets to be a little bit of friction, whatever. So I took the risk. So I started doing them. And now Ava and I, we've gone through a lot personally with this and worn me out sometimes, and her too. And, we walk around in circles a little frustrated sometimes but we kept at it. Ava kept at it. And look at the pictures we've produced. And some other people have picked this up. Kelsey, Vesna, and others have picked that up too. Or the writings, or like Kevin Smith putting the recordings together and whatever. Something. Doing something. But not sitting around wondering what to do. I recommend people in some way, as one example. That's all. That's not a must. Get on Facebook. I get on there myself. I just share the pictures, vote Rebazar, all this political nonsense that's on there. I just click that picture on, click, click, click. I just go on down, and then I see funny videos, and I send them to Ava once in a while about ducks or cats or something. So we giggle a little bit while we're doing this, but something. And like Kelsey and the kids, they get on on Facebook, and they do Facebook Live or whatever. They do something besides what we're doing here. So there's something to do. So if the Africans can't do that with their cell phones and whatever, I get it. But out there in the public, do something. Pick flowers and go share flowers, whatever, and sing the new you or whatever. Share this reality, because this world is suffering and dying very rapidly. I don't want to watch it die. I'm trying to do everything I can. Now, I have a lot of surprises from the real side, but it takes a lot of agreement to bring it through. But I'm very, very focused on this. And we're going to go over some of this on this next part here. And so I don't always share all this because the world's not ready for it. They already think that we're a little tipsy as it is. So I try to keep it kind of realistic according to the world itself. But if we get too far out there, well, especially with the galactic stuff, that's very real, but most people can't see it. I love the adventure. And as this comes to be, so it's going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be a shock for the world, just like the laser planes. People are shocked once they just think it's forest fires. That's their mind idea. You see, they just think, oh, it's a forest fire. And they don't really consider it. But once they learn that, oh, no, these are laser weapons by the government purposely depopulating the place, well, that's a shock. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it at all. They want their la-la land. So, yeah, it's an impossible journey, Charles. I'll admit it. It's an impossible journey. It's not like the babysitting days when Paul was here. This is why people go back to religion. They want to be told what to do. They want to be coddled. And guess what? All of that is the reptilians. And where the individual ends up, well, they've chosen to be coddled and comforted by the reptilians. So they're with them. It wasn't because that, you're supposed to do something within the new presentation, and if not, you go to hell. Well, the thing is that Marjorie made the deal. She made the agreement with Reptilian Joni. Nobody made that for her. She did that on her own. She was warned, but, the boys, they just stepped back. You'd think, oh, gee, why didn't they save her? Because she didn't save herself. That's the whole idea. Nobody saves anybody. All we can do is present. And so again, until you gain that insight to recognize the is and recognize what the boys see and the isness, then yes, it's a struggle. It's an impossible journey. But guess what? It is possible. It really is possible. That's the best part. So again, you decide.